Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, find out who spent the most for your vote. Plus, the San Diego Teachers Union agrees to negotiate to save teachers' jobs. And does San Diego have a political identity crisis? A little bit Democrat, a little bit Republican? We ask our panel of journalists at the roundtable. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Joanne Ferriam. Well, we'd all like to think our vote is not for sale, but do the biggest spenders in an election campaign win the most votes? Kevin Crow, a reporter with Investigative News Source, crunched the campaign finance numbers to try and answer that question. He joins me now from the KPBS newsroom. Kevin, you've been looking at campaign finances for months. Now that most of the votes are counted after Tuesday's primary, give us a breakdown of what some of the candidates spent.
Well, Carl DeMaio, he had raised the most money during the campaign, a lot of it out of his own pocket. He spent the most going in, and he also got the most votes. He ended up spending about $35 per vote. Now, Bob Filner, who brought up the tail end of the group in fundraising, got probably the best deal. He came in second place, but only spent about $9 per vote.
So basically, Kevin, you took the total campaign spending divided by votes, and you ended up with these figures?
Absolutely. Okay,
so let's take a look at another race, the 52nd Congressional District. So first of all, why the 52nd? Why did you look at that district?
Well, the 52nd is important because incumbent Brian Bilbray is running in a new district, and there was some Democratic competition from Scott Peters and Lori Saldana. Now, Scott Peters, in the late stretch before the primary, loaned his campaign $1.25 million and ended up spending about $73 per vote. Now, Brian Bilbray had a lot of name recognition, didn't have to spend as much money, came out with the most votes at about $27. Now, this is money they raised, not necessarily money they spent.
Okay, Kevin, to see your complete analysis, I want to send people to kpbs.org. Kevin Crow, Investigative News Source.
Thank you.
According to a new report, more active duty troops have lost their lives to suicide than to combat so far this year. That report by Associated Press revealed 154 active duty troops committed suicide. That's compared to 138 who lost their lives in combat. Beth Ford Roth is KPBS's military blogger. She's in the KPBS newsroom. Beth, how do these numbers compare to past years?
Well, about 3 years ago was sort of the highest we'd seen since the Afghanistan war began 10 years ago. And then we had sort of a leveling off for the past 2 years. And I think that's what military experts were expecting this year instead of the spike that we saw, the highest it's been in 10 years.
Now, Beth, San Diego is a military town. What are you hearing with regard to troops based here?
Well, in speaking just about Marines, we have a very large Marine base here called Camp Pendleton, as I think many people know. There were 18 Marine suicides so far this year, and 3 of those were at Camp Pendleton.
And how has the military responded to all of this?
You know, I think there's a lot of confusion. As I said before, folks in charge of keeping track of these kind of numbers really expected things to sort of level off. After all, you know, we're out of Iraq now, and we are planning on withdrawal of Afghanistan, and I think that there was the expectation that the suicide numbers would actually decrease instead of basically the skyrocketing number that we're seeing right now.
KPBS military blogger Beth Ford Roth. A new state-of-the-art imaging clinic officially opened in City Heights today. KPBS reporter Peggy Pico toured the center and shows us how its digital scans detect cancer and osteoporosis.
Since its unofficial opening in February, the imaging center at the La Maestra Community Health Clinic has screened 500 patients and found 6 breast cancer cases.
A screening mammogram is 4 standard views.
But the views from this newest generation high-resolution digital scanner can detect cancers smaller than the tip of your little finger.
So we use filmless technology, very high resolution, so we're able to detect very subtle abnormalities in the breast. It's much more sensitive than the film screen mammography.
A flexible panel that conforms to the breast makes this machine more comfortable. And a high pixel monitor makes the image crystal clear to radiologists.
You can see the irregularity of the borders and then the central calcifications.
In the next room is a similar high-definition bone density scanner.
This DEXA scan takes about 10 minutes to scan your body for signs of osteoporosis.
HoloLogic, the makers of these machines, liked the clinic's mission and offered them a deal. The rest of the center was paid for with a federal grant, meaning just about anyone with a referral can be screened here.
Money does not have to be an issue, and nobody gets turned away.
Only Scripps Health and the Naval Medical Center offer the same digital mammogram screenings in San Diego.
That was KPBS science and technology reporter Peggy Pico. La Maestra's Imaging Center also offers 3D sonograms. The San Diego Unified Teachers Union has agreed to start limited bargaining with the school district to prevent at least some of the more than 1,500 teacher layoffs set to go into effect June 30th. KPBS education reporter Kyla Calvert joins us with more details. Kyla, what does limited bargaining mean?
Well, in an email to members last night, Union President Bill Freeman wrote that the union will start discussions with the district once guidelines have been established. And those guidelines would include not negotiating about health care benefits. Other concessions that the district has proposed include foregoing scheduled pay raises and continuing 5 furlough days that are scheduled to be restored in the fall. The district estimated a couple of weeks ago that those 2 concessions would save about $28 million. But the district issued those 1,500 teacher layoffs as well as more than 1,000 other layoffs for non-teaching staff to save more than $90 million.
District leaders have been asking unions to come to the negotiating table for months. Why is the teachers union doing this now?
Well, the district has been issuing notices of possible layoffs for teachers for 5 years now. And until the last year, all of those notices were rescinded before the next school year started. Last year, only about 220 teachers ended up actually losing their jobs after the district initially notified more than 1,300 teachers that they could be laid off. So the union's been saying that the district's budget numbers can't be trusted. But budget analysts from the California Teachers Association reviewed the district's budget last week, and in a written statement released this afternoon, Freeman said that unlike past years, the economic challenges that the state and the district are facing aren't improving.
Education reporter Kyla Calvert. It's the Friday after the primary, and now all the fun begins here at the Evening Edition Roundtable, the analysis of just what happened election night from 2 veteran journalists. Joining me is KPBS's senior Metro reporter, Allison St. John, and John Warren, editor and publisher of San Diego Voice and Viewpoint. Thank you both for being here. Allison, let's start with the mayor's race now. We see the fact that the top 2, far right, far left, Carl DeMaio, Bob Filner, is that a statement somehow on our city?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, the city is 40% registered voters are Democrats and only 28% are Republicans, but DeMaio came out way ahead. And you've got to ask yourself whether perhaps the fact that the independents, the wild card, Nathan Fletcher, never quite managed to establish his identity for voters. They couldn't quite figure out enough where he stood and how he would vote on issues that mattered to them for them to vote for him, and so he came in third. It does look like we're back to the old Democrat-Republican face-off, in spite of the fact that this is supposed to be a nonpartisan race. You know, those 2 labels do represent some very different values.
And John, we often hear from the public they're sick of the partisan politics, but are they really, or is this just sort of a statement on who comes out to vote in a primary?
It's just a cliche. It's a cliche because, I mean, when you look at the issues that were on the ballot this time, I think a big factor with DeMaio is the amount of time that he's put in as a council member with his various plans and ideas, and he was a driving force behind Prop B. And the people are tired of all of the issues with Prop B in terms of pension reform. It looks like you're not getting it. We're in and out of court. It's not happening. They're not exactly in love with labor's image in terms of this whole issue. And then the Project Labor Agreement adds to it because it's kind of like this is a companion piece to just stop this madness. And so I think that's a greater issue from the public than the party identification of the 2 front runners.
Yes, and I agree with you. I think the fact that even although there are more Democratic voters in the city, this issue of the pension has raised such a lot of public passion that it's kind of superseded the party thing. People who would normally have voted perhaps with more labor issues are tired of the pension, and they're jealous of the pension, and they want to see that changed.
So, go ahead.
And it's very significant that in the days before, I didn't see a lot of attention given to this, but the gay community came out against Prop B because under the 401 pension approach, they would lose a lot of benefits because if it's a 401k plus Social Security, they will not be able to claim partnerships in terms of the federal component of the programs. And yet it still went forward. And so I think that's indicative of some of the issues that have not been addressed that people were concerned about, but they were more angry about the pension issue itself than this not being a perfect answer.
One wonders if there was enough time for that particular issue to gain traction. I remember that story. Katie Orr was reporting on that, and that was sort of towards the end of the campaign. Do you think it just didn't have enough time to?
I don't think it had enough time to gain traction, and I believe if it had gained traction, then it's a question of would it have taken votes from DeMaio and given them to DeMonis, but DeMonis was so far back, it clearly wouldn't have made much difference, so I guess.
Yeah, and I don't know whether San Diego voters realize how radical this particular pension initiative is. It's very different from the other pension reform initiative in California and San Jose, where it's more about changing the amount that public employees are contributing to their pension plans. This one really breaks the mold of public employee pensions by saying all new hires, except policemen, will get a 401k like the private sector style pension. So if voters had been given a different choice of perhaps, you know, like the San Jose voters had, all they wanted was pension reform, and the choice they got was 401ks. So that's what they voted for.
And a choice that we don't know whether it's legal still. I mean, it's subject to all kinds of court challenges. I want to move on a little bit to money. Kevin Crow from Investigative News Source was here earlier, and he broke down the numbers for us in terms of how much money candidates spent, divided it by the number of votes. We ended up seeing some numbers. Carl DeMaio, $35 per vote. Bob Filner, $9. You know, does that surprise you, John, at all?
Well, no, I'm not surprised. I think Filner's strategy all along was that he would hold on to his money or whatever resources, and he was counting on name recognition and being the only Democrat in the race. DeMaio had an uphill battle because he already had labor against him, and he was concerned about how he was going to be positioned with some people downtown. But yet, the mayor, whom he, I guess, made peace with in terms of Prop B, had endorsed DeMonis. And so it's not surprising in terms of the way the money went and the fact that Filner didn't try to put more in, because he really has made it clear he believes the money will be there as he moves toward November.
And that's certainly true. There's going to be a lot more money in November. I mean, Carl DeMaio, you've got to remember, he came from the background of working in Washington, D.C. I think a lot of his supporters are people back there who see that he is spearheading a reform that is very different from any kind of reform that's happening in any other city, and they want to see him succeed. Filner, of course, Congress, you know, they both have contacts in Washington, will almost certainly garner a lot of money from Democrats who are seeing that this city is representing the tip of the spear, in a sense, in terms of pension reform, among other issues.
Do you think, John, too, with the 52nd congressional race, that we're going to see a lot of federal super PAC money pouring into that one as well?
Well, I believe we will, because that race, while it's important to us in terms of personalities locally, the redrawn boundaries, I believe that when you consider the battle in the House for control, that seat under the redistricting is important to the Republicans in terms of trying to retain control, and it's important to the Democrats in terms of trying to regain control. So because of that, you're going to see lots of dollars come in on both sides. It's only a question whether it's going to be Peters or Saldana.
Yeah, and it's Brian Bilbray, of course, is a Republican incumbent. Well, we say incumbent, but the district is new, of course, and really a tight race between Peters and Saldana, though, with Peters still slightly ahead of Saldana as they continue to count. Now, let's move on to the supervisors race. Allison, tell us what was so interesting Tuesday night with that race.
Okay, so San Diego has finally, after almost 2 decades, got an open seat. One of the 5 supervisors, Pam Slater-Price, decided to step down, and now the 2 winners coming out of this primary are 1 Republican and 1 Democrat. So the Board of Supervisors has not seen a Democrat since the late 80s. It's been a long time. We had, in this particular primary, we had 2 Republicans, Steve Dannon, who was considered the front runner, and Carl Hilliard, who was the mayor of Del Mar. And you could say that one of their problems was they split the Republican vote, giving Dave Roberts, the Democrat, the chance to creep into second place. And now he is head-to-head, Dave Roberts and Steve Dannon. So it's going to be a very interesting race.
John, why is this significant if the makeup of the board changes? We knew that we going in, we had all Republicans. So what happens if you end up now with a Democrat and 4 Republicans?
Well, it's very interesting because this Democrat, if he's elected, or even if it's a Republican, they will come under the new term limits for the Board of Supervisors. So it's not like the 5 people have been there for 18 years. Now we're going to see a change. And it is believed that with that change is going to come some change in terms of the attitude. It's been a very conservative entity with the 5. I mean, they've held very tightly together the $1 million discretion fund for each, and the manner in which they've divvied things up, and the fact that they've been financially sound has played a major role. But I think what helps Dave Roberts in this scenario is the fact that Pam Slater-Price, Republican, has crossed over and endorsed him as a Democrat, and I think that's going to add to the interest.
And Steve Dannon has cast himself as somebody who would make a big change and come in and get rid of the so-called slush fund that the supervisors have. But actually, he, if anything, is more conservative, or as conservative as the rest of the board, so he's likely to ripple the waters less than if Dave Roberts, the Democrat, got in.
And I do want to add, though, when he was on the show and he said he would get rid of the slush fund, I did ask him, if you can't convince the other supervisors to get rid of it, will you take it? And he said yes. So we should add that as well.
More symbolic than anything else.
Well, it only takes 3 of them. 3 out of 5 for the majority, so it's not like he's got to get a unanimous vote. He just needs 2 other people to come along and say, which way will you go?
Not a lot of time left, Allison, but tell us about what happened in Oceanside over rent control.
Well, the rent control was a bit of a David and Goliath issue. You had 5 times as much money raised by the park owners as by the mobile home owners, and yet the mobile home owners prevailed with 65% of the vote. It was a very hotly campaigned issue. There were people out on the streets in Oceanside waving banners, and a lot of mailers. I mean, I got more than 24 mailers just for that one issue alone. So it really was a hot issue, and I think it shows that the people of Oceanside still care about the veterans and the seniors who are finding a little oasis of affordable housing still, and even although it was only phasing out rent control, it would have affected the value of their homes, and so the measure went down.
Well, you guys have been great, Allison St. John and John Warren, and I do want to send people also to our website, kpbs.org, where they can listen to a much longer conversation with none other than Gloria Penner and the 2 of you. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you.
Asari Flower Studio and Event Design in Solana Beach does the typical things you expect from a florist, like wedding bouquets and centerpieces, but it also offers classes in floral design and promotes working with flowers as horticultural therapy. KPBS Arts reporter Beth Accomando visits the studio.
Yes, welcome. You gonna follow me in?
Tam Ashworth is the owner of and floral stylist at Asari Flower Studio.
Every month we do a flower arranging class. This month we're going to be doing floral vignettes.
Morgan Jenkins is the studio manager for Asari.
If you have 3 smaller vases in your house and you want to make a floral display, you can do it. You don't have to have this big vase. That's the whole idea of floral vignettes.
If you buy yourself some roses, you can probably put it in this medium-sized container so that it's just a little something. And then I'll do a white and a green in the taller, and then I'll do kind of more detail in the lower. But it could all be worked together. I treat it as texture, color. Everything has to all correlate and artfully goes together. I went to school for interior decorating. I went to art school. Then I became a model for a long time in Thailand. And that was like the awakening of fashion senses. And then coming over to America, I kind of tied everything all together with doing flowers, because that's like a little bit of art school and a little bit of fashion, and that's what we're doing, is styling flowers. Basically, it's my medium. It's pretty therapeutic, I think, to do flowers. I think, you know, starting off my day with going to the flower market, being surrounded with flowers, that's already put me in a good mood.
And it can do the same for others. According to the nonprofit American Horticultural Therapy Association, people respond positively to green plants and colorful flowers. Jenkins has a degree in horticulture.
Horticulture therapy is a profession, and it's also an idea that's practiced in the industry. It's for people to really reconnect with nature. For floral designers, it's like left brain development. It's that creative aspect of designing with flowers. So if you don't have a garden outside, it's bringing the garden in. It's working with those petals. It's being stimulated by colors. It's being stimulated by textures.
Next month's class promises to stimulate the additional senses of taste and smell.
The culinary class is going to be really focused on edible flowers and edible greens. So you can think herbs, you can think of, rosemary that you can put in arrangements.
So flowers that are like marigolds, you can eat the petals of marigolds. And then we can also arrange marigolds into marigold bouquets as well.
Attendees will also get to sample floral-inspired drinks.
Yes, we have really decided to make an evening out of it. So everyone gets to either sip on a floral-inspired wine cocktail, or we can make lavender lemonade.
Everything about Asari Flower Studio seems designed to please the senses, even the client area.
This is sort of like a consulting area. On the wall, we've got some loops of images playing with the weddings.
As you might expect, the studio does a lot of weddings. Some are on a grand scale, like a two-part ceremony that took place in India and Thailand. Ashworth's fashion background comes in handy, too, in determining trends.
Whatever's on the runway, in a year or two, the flowers, everybody wants that sort of colorways. Like last year, it was all purples, the rage of the purples, and then this year, there's tons of corals.
But Ashworth and her studio do more than just weddings.
We were involved with Art Alive. We interpret a painting, yes, and we showed Stega. It was one of the ballerinas, twirling with tulips and hybrid delphiniums. It's a blue arrangement with white.
Her work mixes both artistry and practicality.
When we do centerpieces for corporate groups, they do not want scented at all. They want just color, bold colors, so that they can serve wine and food. It won't interfere with food.
In addition, Ashworth works with materials that have to be bought fresh each day and have a limited shelf life. But she insists she never tires of flowers.
No, I love moving through the season. It's lovely to get variety within a year. These are also kind of like herby, sweet. Sometimes we have lavender in it.
That was KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando. Asari Flower Studio and Event Design's next class is Floral Vignettes this Wednesday evening at its Solana Beach shop. Gates to the San Diego County Fair open today for its 2012 season. The fair's theme, intergalactic, out of this world. There's some new rides, new exhibits, and even new things to be fried. However, vendors of healthy food are also showing up now at the fair. But the fried delicacies remain a tradition. Of course, Charlie's Chicken, famous for deep frying just about anything, has opened up a new stand called Pineapple Express that features fruits and vegetables, no batter, no deep frying. Who would have thought? The fair runs through the 4th of July at the Del Mar Fairgrounds. Tonight in the public square, a race still too close to call. Two men are vying for Superior Court Judge, office number 34 in San Diego County. Garland Peed versus Gary Creep. It's a race making it to the national talk show circuit for a couple of reasons. The obvious, their names, Peed versus Creep. And because Gary Creep is somewhat of a controversial figure, a so-called birther. In other words, he is skeptical of President Obama's citizenship. Here's a clip from the Rachel Maddow Show.
In a Superior Court judgeship race in San Diego, Gary Creep has been narrowly ahead since polls closed. With 100% of precincts reporting, and before they started counting the absentee ballots, there was just a 56-vote difference between Gary Creep, the birther infomercial guy, and the other candidate. Now, the other candidate is named Peed. Yes, this is a case of creep with a K versus Peed, P-E-E-D.
Well, we have an update that other candidate, Peed, is actually in the lead right now. As of about an hour ago, he is ahead by 1,093 votes with 88,000 left to count. Well, if you have been following this race, I would love to hear from you. Email me, jfarian@kpbs.org, or you can follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook. Recapping today's top stories, the San Diego Unified Teachers Union has agreed to negotiate with the school district to save jobs. The union will consider giving up pay raises and taking 5 unpaid days off, which would save about $28 million. The number of military suicides is increasing, the highest it's been in 10 years. And an analysis of campaign finances for City of San Diego races shows big money doesn't always mean a big win. Congressman and mayoral candidate Bob Filner spent $9 per vote. That's compared to Councilmember Carl DeMaio, who spent $35. Both men made it to the runoff for the city's top job. Well, you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.